Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another great panel. And I say another because, there are just so many to choose from this year. Um, Again, Start Me Up Hong Kong is so very proud and honored to have a panel essentially explaining the importance of Islamic finance through the FinTech point of view. Um, we have a fantastic group of speakers joining us from Dubai, from all other parts of Asia, and we can't wait to get to it. But first, I would like to hand off over to Musheer, who is going to be the moderator for this panel. So I'll let you self introduce as well as introduce the other speakers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kenneth. It's wonderful to be part of the SIS Summit once again. As you mentioned, I think we have a fantastic panel touching on a topic that not too many people generally discuss or have been discussing. That is the impact of fintech on boosting the finances of 1.8 billion Muslims, right? How does fintech lead the way? Now, with me are three people who have been very active in the space and come from three different dimensions in how we are building the finances and digitization of the same for the Muslim people across the world. So what I will do is I'll request each of the panelists to quickly introduce themselves and what they're working on. We'll start with Nihal, who is based in Dubai. Nihal, please make a brief introduction, and then we'll move to Tariq and Jad.
Thank you, Musheer. It's a pleasure to be joining you, Tariq, and Jad on this panel. I'm currently based out of Dubai. I'm a founding board member of the MENA FinTech Association, and I currently I'm a consultant at the IFC on their DigiLab Finance Initiative, helping banks and MFIs with their digital transformation journeys. Mainly on go-to-market strategies and how we can reap up the benefits from their transformation journeys. I'm in my own capacity as well, working as an advisor and consultant to a number of fintechs in the region.
Thanks, Nihal. Tariq, can we get your introduction, please?
Sure, thank you, Musheer. My name is Tariq Hussain. I'm with a VC firm that focuses on investments in emerging markets called Gobi Partners. And at Gobi, we have a specific vertical that focuses on products and services catered to Muslim consumers. And we coined this vertical Taqwa Tech, right? And I essentially lead that investment activity or practice across Southeast Asia, South Asia, and the Middle East. And just to round it up, a quick background on Gobi. As I mentioned, we're a VC firm that focuses on emerging markets. We started off in China back in 2002 when China was an emerging market. And we've since expanded our practice to Southeast Asia, South Asia, the Middle East, as well as Africa. And today we manage about 13 funds across these regions with an AUM size of 1.1 billion US dollars.
Hey guys,
absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm the founder and CEO of MyAhmed. We're launching a digital bank in the UK, starting in the UK and taking that into Europe and then using that as a pivot to other places. We're trying to, the core market for us is the Muslim market. And we find that it's very underserved both globally, but especially for Muslims that reside in Europe. And we're trying to solve a lot of the pain points, whether it's from the traditional banking perspective, but also the asset management perspective and taking it from there. So we'll be launching in Q4 in the UK and sometime in Q1 in the rest of Europe.
Thank you, Jad. My introduction is I'm co-founder of Finstep Asia. It's a advisory firm which is bridging startups and corporates in terms of venture building as well as growth and innovation practices. I'm also co-founder of the FinTech Association of Hong Kong and an initiative known as India Tech Hong Kong that bridges India and the Hong Kong startup ecosystem. Right, we have a short time and I want to jump into our main theme. Firstly, when we look at the Islamic economy, a lot of people are wondering about what are we talking about and where is this Islamic economy set up. So just a brief introduction to that. As we said, 1.8 billion people, a majority, about 60 to 70% of whom are under the age of 30. So fairly young economies spread over Middle East, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and Africa largely, but we do have a strong Muslim population in Western Europe as well as in North America. In terms of the way practices are done in the Islamic finance world, there is the concept of Sharia, which takes into factors such as payment of interest, illegal activities, to mention a few, and dispersion of wealth and sharing of wealth as well. And these are factors that play a role. But what we are looking to talk about is not restricted just to Sharia financing, but we are talking about how Muslims across the world are approaching finance as well as what is being taking place in, I would say, the heart being two places: Southeast Asia, largely led by Indonesia and Malaysia, and in the Middle East, led by the whole UAE plus Saudi Arabia and Iran and North Africa belt. Right. Jumping into the first question, where I would like to ask each of you, how are you defining a Muslim customer? What for you would be a Muslim customer? So, and Nihal, it can be from your perspective of what you've done in your previous role with Temonis and what are you looking at from IFC. Tarek, you can be like how Gobi looks at for your startups when they are looking to define a Muslim customer. How would that be? And Jad, I mean, your customer base is largely targeted towards Muslim. So why don't we start with Tarek on how Gobi looks to define the Muslim customer, as it were, in the region and beyond.
Sure. So for us, a Muslim customer or consumer, the obvious answer is they have to be Muslims, right? So that's the first tick. But I think ultimately, we define a Muslim consumer based on people that consider Muslim values when either considering a product or a service, right? So that's how we define a Muslim consumer.
Okay. Nihal, you like to take a go at this?
Yes, sure. So defining a Muslim consumer for me might be a bit. I mean, I'm looking at it from a bank perspective or a service provider perspective. How would they shape up their services and their products around their defined target segment, which is in our case here Muslim consumer? Does it mean that their products and services does not suit non-Muslim consumers? I would say that probably the rest of the panel would agree with me that it can definitely suit other, non-Muslim consumers. But since our focus is on Muslim consumers today and working towards building products around that is customer-centric around Muslim consumers and what they want, I would say they would, as Tarek said, primarily they're looking for financial services that abide by the Sharia law, and they would be looking to satisfy their daily activities as Muslims through the financial service providers, be it payment requirements that satisfy some of the Muslim-based activities, be it during Eid, during Ramadan, during the seasons. So putting together a value proposition that works around a typical daily Muslim consumer would be something that we would look into.
Thanks. And when you're building out your persona, right, of the target customer, that's effectively a Muslim customer. So, what has been your philosophy, and how's your team in?
Yeah, I'll tell you. Let me just add some background for those that aren't very familiar with the Muslim market. And so, all religions have sort of a set of faiths or beliefs. Islam is a little bit unique in the sense that it has a whole body of laws that were written into that are provided by God for stuff that we have to sort of follow, and a part of that covers finances. And the three big monotheistic religions in the West compared to where we're sitting now all had issues with usury, so making money on money. Different religions sort of abandoned it to a different degree, but for Muslims, it's a very integral thing. You can't sort of make money on money. There has to be sort of a risk-sharing aspect. And so when we were planning for MyAhmed, we really cared to see, okay, it's in the Quran, it's given to us, by God. Do people still value this, or do they really go out of their way to follow the Sharia law? And so we did a survey. I personally interviewed 60 families, and we supplemented that with another study that's another 1,000 people. And we found that over 90% of Muslims in the UK found that finance should align with their values. And 74% said that Islam is a part of their identity. And so when we were building MyAhmed, we tried to think, okay, from a Sharia law perspective, we have to abide by that. By definition, we're an Islamic bank or a halal bank. But also, as we were speaking to people, we needed to understand, so what parts are the most important? Because there's a lot of rules. It essentially boils down to the two things that I spoke about, but what are the rules that govern it? And so we found that charity is a big part of their beliefs. And we found that in the UK, Muslims are the largest contributors as a percentage of their income to charities. And we tried to build it around the Muslim consumer. So to answer your question more directly, we put Muslims who follow the Islamic faith or were just born as Muslims as the center, and we built all the services around them. And so, how Tariq said it is, by definition, it's the Muslim consumer. But when we pitch MyAhmed to non-Muslims, we just say, look, think of Ahmed as sort of a person, and then that's sort of why we called it Ahmed. And he just happens to be your Muslim friend that knows about finance, that can invest your money, and so on and so forth. So we're trying to build social responsibility into everything that we're doing, and it does appeal to Muslims because by virtue we've built it around them, but also to non-Muslims. If you care about social responsibility, then we're for you, basically.
Right. I think that's a good way of defining that, right? It's not just about looking at a characteristic based on the faith, but you also have a lot of things that people believe in which could lead to ethical finance, could lead to social responsibility, and how it can still attract people. It's very, very much not being exclusive. It can actually be very inclusive for a variety of people across the spectrum when it comes to financial inclusion, and the details, etc., could also be very beneficial when you look at no interest rates, shared loss and profit, as well as the ways to turn around debt, right? So that cannot be very helpful for anybody who is looking in the space. I think peer-to-peer lending is another classic case where when you are able to control the interest rates as such, or actually have no interest rates as such, that gives a lot better way of financing the underserved, right? Now, moving on to the point about the Islamic finance is there, there's the Muslim economy, and now I'm going to switch slightly from saying, yes, there is this Muslim economy, there's 1.8 billion people, as we said, right? Southeast Asia probably has 300 to 350 million. South Asia has about 600 million if you combine India, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka, and then you go, and Myanmar to some extent, and then you go into the Middle East, which has probably, again, 500 million people as part of that edifice. So, Nihal, in your experience, having been catering to the Muslim population within the Islamic finance as well as outside, I mean, what is your view of the banks in the region as they're catering to the populace?
Thank you, Musheer. I think that's a very interesting question. I have to say that I think about 5 or 6 years ago, there was this study about what are consumers looking for when dealing with their Islamic banks, and they were interviewing Muslims and non-Muslim consumers for that sort, because Islamic banks and Islamic finance does not only exist for, it's not exclusive, as we just said, right? And 1/5 of non-Islamic bank customers said they would switch to an Islamic bank if they were offered better services or more convenience. Obviously, there's two parts there that's important to address. There's the Sharia compliant products, but there's also the services element and the user experience element that does not change whether you're a Muslim consumer or a non-Muslim consumer. Everyone's looking for convenience. Everyone wants to access financial services at the palm of their hands. Yes, a major a major advantage that obviously Muslims go for Islamic banks is the fact that it's Sharia compliant. And there has been, and I have to say, there has been a massive leap into how banks are trying to retain their Muslim community, but also gain more non-Muslim customers, customer base. And they've been doing that by their digital transformation projects. Through the digital transformation, they're realizing that in order for us to compete with conventional banks, it's not enough that we're offering Sharia compliant products. It has to be that we offer them at a service level that the consumers are looking for today. And so a lot of banks in the region have embarked on that journey. Islamic banks have embarked on that journey. There are amazing examples. I'll dig one that's a recent a digital-only bank in Bahrain that's been launched by a subsidiary of a Kuwaiti-based bank, but they've launched their digital-only bank in Bahrain, and they're actually calling it the first community banking application, the community bank application, and there's very much catered to the Muslim community, to the point where they're looking, when they've structured their eKYC and online onboarding, remote onboarding, they've taken into account whether, if it's a female, then they might be a bit. There are rules and they need to abide by the Islamic culture of the from a customer support perspective. If there's they need to have females to cater to other female customer support requests, so they've plugged that into their service or support level and operations. So it's up to that point of working out their service levels and their operations and user experience to cater to the entire Muslim value chain and the expected experience on that front, and not just looking at an Islamic bank from a Sharia compliant product, investment products, and financial products per se. So there are measures now that Islamic banks are working towards building their entire, not just the products, as I said, but their entire user experience around the typical day of a Muslim, of a typical Muslim, and abiding by their own values, societal values as well. So this community bank offers charity, as you said, peer-to-peer payments to support your community brothers and sisters, and so on. So they've managed to build this proposition around the Muslim community. There are other banks that are very much, and I'll talk about SME banks as well. So they've actually looked into the blockchain technology for trade distribution, and we know that with trade finance, a big part of the and especially Islamic-based trade finance it's a big challenge to make sure that all of your transactions are backed by real assets, right? So it's so they've incorporated blockchain technology with the help of a FinTech, and that's a bank here in the UAE. And so there's a lot of examples where I think banks are upping their game and realizing, I mean, Islamic banks are realizing that there's a lot that they can do on enhancing the user experience, while they stay compliant to the Sharia laws. In the past, I would say before 5 to 6 years, there has been a lot of focus on being Sharia compliant, and they believe that that's the way that they would gain customers, and that's the major advantage. And there has been a bit of negligence in terms of the user experience and digitization, but I think in the past 5 to 6 years, we've seen that the Islamic banks are embarking on that journey and are up to par with the conventional banks, even though they still, I would say, suffer a little bit of a perception problem. But if you really dig down, they're very much offering the same thing, but it still remains a perception problem that they should turn around.
Thank you, Nihal. I think it's a very good comprehensive overview about how the banks are looking to cater both from Islamic banks' perspective as well as in the region as such. I'm going to switch to Jad now, and I'm going to put you in a bit of a spot, Jad. You're launching an Islamic bank in the UK, right? You are from the Middle East. You've lived in Hong Kong. You are based right now in Hong Kong, and you've been there. But why are you choosing to go to UK? And so what is your next game plan, but also about what are innovators doing in the Middle East and in Southeast Asia when it comes to catering to the Muslim populace? Right? Why is it taking so much time with a population that's so young?
So just to clarify, I'm based in London. I'm here just because it's safer from a COVID perspective, but I am based in London. I'm here temporarily until they open up in London and it becomes safer. But you're right. I grew up in the U.S. and Lebanon. I lived in London for over 10 years, and I lived in Hong Kong for 4 years, and I've worked in all the places. And it has given me a chance, especially in my old job, we used to invest in emerging markets and sort of see where technology is taking us, whether it's Tencent and these guys. But it's very interesting. So if you really look at the numbers from an Islamic economy perspective, and you just look at the sheer power of, so call it the Muslim dollar, the Muslim pound, and so for financial assets, it's $3.8 trillion. It's gigantic. Islamic banking alone is $2.4 trillion. Investing in halal funds is $783 billion. Sukuk are another 300. From a purchasing power, every single year in 2017, Muslims spent $2.1 trillion on traveling. This was supposed to be 2020 number, but of course that changed. But it's 156 million Muslim travel annually, spending $220 billion. The halal food market is $70 billion. And I think people just sort of woke up to this thing and said, okay, there is an opportunity. And specifically for finance, it was very hard a while ago to start an Islamic bank because you needed to start any bank. You needed a lot of capital and so on. And so what has changed is technology. What has changed is the FCA hadn't issued a banking license in 100 years, and it only started in 2010 after the crisis. So it became easier for everyone. But for me, the UK is the perfect choice. I found emerging market brands that go and take over in developed markets. And so we wanted to be a bank that is started in a place where the regulation is super strong, where there is solid rule of law, where the rights to your assets are sort of yours forever, and that people really trust. I come from Lebanon, and if you guys know, all our banks went bankrupt because of some elaborate Ponzi scheme by the government. And so we wanted to be a place that's very solid. And even though the UK has a small Muslim population, if you combine Europe, it's 28 million Muslims. They're 8 years younger than the average, and it's a number that will triple in most cities in the EU. And so that was our main reason. Regulation, a market that's totally underserved, the opportunity to improve people's lives. And what we found is that a lot of people are outside the banking sector simply because either they don't trust banks or they feel that they don't comply with their values. Now, more broadly, we've seen digital banks before. We won't be the first digital bank. Insha, which is owned by a Turkish bank that's in turn owned by a Bahraini bank, they are a digital bank targeting the Turkish community in Germany. And so there is a digital, an e-money type wallet. But then you have a little bit more creative. There's a company called Yielders, which is property crowdfunding in the UK, an excellent team and have done very well. I think we've all seen the news about WHub Invest getting a giant check from the Saudi, from Aramco, and they offer Sharia compliant investments to people. Sarwa is another example, even though the whole package isn't Sharia compliant, they have Sharia compliant funds. We're trying to be both, eventually become a full bank and a robo-advisor as well, going into deposit taking and lending. And then in South Asia or Southeast Asia, and Tariq knows better than me, but so I'm just going to quote a few words. So right now, the vice president of Indonesia, he's basically said that Islamic FinTech is key is a national priority for them. And so he's sort of pushing that through. And we've seen companies like Alami, which is a peer-to-peer lending platform, but even GoPay, which is a part of Gojek, the ride-sharing platform, they've teamed up with the Indonesian Mosque Council, and they're facilitating donations to their 80,000 mosques. In Indonesia alone, that's worth $500 million a year. And so we're seeing innovation across the sector simply because, look, startups and fintech and tech in general has accelerated post-crisis. And it started slow, but as we see success after success after success, people are more willing to go in. And frankly, it's easier. We wouldn't have raised enough money to build a core banking platform, but today you could leverage what other people have built. And I think that's the key thing that's changed. Identifying the market and the ease of entry of the market. Those two things are important.
Thanks, Judd. Now, Tariq, I'm going to switch gears and come to you. When you're seeing innovators like Judd and the others like Wahid and quite a bit like Ealers, you have Ethic crowding in Southeast Asia, you have Alami FinTech as well, but a bunch of them, like 125 FinTech. So when Gobi is looking to finance here, right, and you've had that experience over the last decade in investing in the space, what are the key interest areas that you're seeing from your? I'm obviously not looking for the secret sauce of what you're going for, but it'll be good to understand, I think, for the market, like what are the key areas that are growing and what is attracting the venture capital flows into the industry.
Sure. So I think any VC, when we look at a potential deal, we want a product or a service that has a mass market appeal, right? That's always number one. And number two, a product or a service that we can scale relatively quickly and in a very cost-efficient manner, right? So ultimately, that's the high-level criteria when we look at in terms of what deals we want to back, right? Now, if we look at it from a Islamic fintech perspective, I mean, there's just so much to do, right? There's a lot that has not been done, but there's a lot to be done, a lot of spaces to explore. Now, what we have done internally is we want to go after fintech products or fintech solutions that serve the underbanked as well as unbanked, right? If you look at the distribution of Muslim consumers, a lot of them are unbanked, right? So that is obviously a key criteria that we look at. The product has to serve the underserved or the unbanked or underbanked, whatever term you want to use. Right now, if we look at sectors that on the conventional side has done really well, it has to do well on the Islamic fintech side, right? So we look at things like wealth management, right? Giving the underbanked or the unbanked access to investment products in a Sharia compliant manner, right? If you go to Pakistan and you speak to someone off the street, his financial knowledge may be non-existent, but he knows that in a Sharia compliant manner, you cannot charge interest. He knows that, right? But his financial knowledge may not be as strong, right? So we want to go after areas like wealth management, be it robo-advisory, be it a virtual bank, right? Lending is a huge space as well, right? Sharia compliant lending, be it consumer loans, SME loans, working capital loans, supply chain loans, right? I mean, one of these areas is even, the market potential, the market opportunity is sizable enough, right? We want to go after insurtech players, right? Players that provide takaful to Muslim consumers, right? We want to go after enterprise solutions that provide platforms for Islamic banks, right? That bring together Sharia advisors. There's so many Sharia advisors all around the world, that have very different viewpoints, right? How can we, back a platform that consolidates, all these advisors sitting all across the globe? So these are, some of the key sectors that we are looking, or we're targeting. But ultimately, I think our goal is to back the first virtual Islamic bank, right? These are the little pieces of that puzzle, but ultimately that's where we want to get to.
We're looking forward to Jet providing you that virtual Islamic bank.
Let's talk about it. We've spoken before. Let's talk more.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're coming to the close of the panel. I'm going to give each of you 10 seconds, mind the time, right? 10 seconds to pick one sector of that will be very crucial for the Muslim population's financing fintech needs in the next 5 years. One sector that you're going to pick, and 10 seconds for that. Let's start with Nihal.
Sorry, Musheer, I didn't get your question properly. So one sector that would that will
influence the Islamic finance world, Islamic fintech world in the next 5 years. One sector, and you have 10 seconds for it.
Right. I would say I would go with the direction that Tariq had just explained. I would say any fintech that comes on board to serve the unbanked and serve that has I would say has a philanthropic note to it.
Okay. I'm going to cut you off with the 10 seconds up. I'm going to go to Tariq, 10 seconds.
10 seconds. I think there's just so much to do, so much opportunity.
Fine.
So my answer is all.
Well, okay.
All sectors.
Jad?
I'm not going to copy, but that is it. Providing a full banking suite, and especially for financial inclusion of the underbanked is the most important thing, be it from robo-advisor all the way through lending and taking deposits. That's the most important thing.
So we have, I think we come to the end of the panel.